Matteo Valenti opened the wrong door at 7:14 p.m., and in 1 second, the woman he had spent 11 months pretending not to love became the only thing in the world he could see. Not her face, not the blouse slipping from her shoulders, the bruises. Arya Monroe stood frozen inside the private wardrobe room of Valenti Tower, a clean black evening shirt clutched against her chest. Her stained blouse hung halfway down her arms. Her back was turned toward the mirror, but there was no hiding the damage anymore. Purple marks covered her skin. One wrapped around her upper arm in the shape of fingers. Matteo did not move. For years, men had lowered their voices when he entered a room. Families had disappeared because he gave one quiet order. Entire businesses had changed hands because he signed one page. But nothing had ever made the Mafia boss go as still as the sight of Arya trying to cover what someone had done to her. She whispered his name like an apology. And that was the moment Matteo Valenti stopped pretending he was only her boss. Another darkened the side of her ribs. A fading bruise near her shoulder blade looked older, yellow at the edges, as if the first wound had not finished healing before the next one arrived. Matteo stopped as if a gun had been raised between them. Arya froze. Her eyes met his through the mirror, wide, terrified. Not because he had seen her changing, but because he had seen the truth. Matteo turned away instantly, one hand still on the door handle, his face angled toward the hallway. "Forgive me," he said, voice low and controlled. "I was told my cufflinks were in here." Behind him, fabric rustled fast. Arya's breath shook once, then disappeared behind the professional silence she wore better than any dress. "It's fine, Mr. Valenti. I should have locked the door." He did not look back. He kept his eyes on the dark wood panel in front of him, jaw tight enough to hurt. The gala downstairs was already filling with donors, senators, surgeons, judges, and men who owed him money but smiled like friends. In 20 minutes, he was supposed to stand on stage and announce a new wing for the Children's Heart Hospital. In 30 minutes, Dr. Adrian Vale would be honored as the city's miracle surgeon. In 40 minutes, Adrian Vale would place a hand on Arya's waist in front of cameras and call her his future wife. Matteo had known that last part for 6 weeks. He had told himself it changed nothing. She was his secretary. She was engaged. She had chosen another man. Matteo Valenti did not reach for women who had chosen someone else. No matter how often his eyes found her before his mind allowed it, no matter how many times her quiet presence had turned his office from a war room into the only peaceful place in his day, but now he had seen the bruises. Now every rule he had forced himself to obey felt like paper near fire. "I slipped," Arya said from behind him. The lie arrived too quickly, too cleanly, too practiced. Matteo's hand tightened on the door handle. Stairs don't leave fingerprints. Silence. He could hear the faint hum of the tower's air system, the distant music from the ballroom below, the soft click of Arya's buttons as she dressed with shaking hands. "Please don't do this," she whispered. "Do what?" "Look at me like it hurts you too." That sentence cut deeper than she meant it to. Matteo closed his eyes for half a second. For 11 months, he had never crossed a line with her. Not when she stayed late with him during negotiations and remembered how he took his coffee without asking. Not when she left food on his desk at midnight because she knew he forgot meals during violent weeks. Not when he sent a car after rainstorms and called it company policy. Even though no other employee received that policy. Not when she smiled at his dry jokes as if the man beneath the Valenti name was still worth seeing. He had never told her that the sound of her footsteps outside his office could calm him faster than whiskey. He had never told her that he kept the blue scarf she once forgot in the conference room, folded in his bottom drawer because returning it would require admitting he had noticed it was hers. He had never told her that the day she came to work wearing Adrian Vale's ring, he had closed 3 meetings early and spent the rest of the evening staring at the city like it had personally betrayed him. He had said nothing because she deserved freedom and his world turned affection into leverage too easily. "It does," Matteo said. The words escaped before he could stop them. Behind him, Arya went still. When she finally spoke, her voice had turned back into the voice he knew from office hours, polite, distant, controlled. "The gala starts in 12 minutes. Your speech cards are on the podium. Senator Vale's family is seated in the front row." Dr. Vale asked that the hospital video play before his remarks, not after. Matteo almost laughed at the cruelty of it. She was bruised, frightened, half-dressed in a room he had accidentally entered, and she was still managing his schedule. "Arya, Mr. Valenti, who did this to you? No one you can punish. Try me. She opened the door herself then. Matteo stepped back before turning. She stood fully dressed now in a black silk blouse that covered her shoulders and wrists, her hair pinned low, her face calm except for the eyes. Her eyes had always betrayed her, not to everyone, to him. He could read exhaustion in them, stubbornness, irritation, small kindnesses she tried to hide. Tonight he saw fear, and beneath it something worse, resignation. "You can't punish him," she said softly. "He's downstairs being honored by your charity." Matteo did not move. He did not need to ask. He already knew. Adrian Vale, the surgeon with the clean smile, the gifted hands, the perfect public reputation, and a diamond ring on Arya's finger that looked less like a promise now and more like a shackle. "Did he do this?" Matteo asked. Arya's mouth tightened. "I have work to do." She tried to step past him. He did not block her. He would not become another locked door in her life. But he spoke before she reached the hallway. "If you walk out there beside him tonight, I will not stop you." She paused. "Thank you, but I will find out the truth." Her shoulders stiffened. "No." The word was sharp, panicked, nothing like the careful secretary voice she had warned seconds earlier. "You can't investigate him. I can investigate anyone. Not him. Why?" Arya turned back, and for 1 second, the mask cracked so completely that Matteo saw the woman underneath, tired, trapped, terrified, and still trying to protect someone else more than herself. "Because if Adrian falls," she said, "my brother may die." Matteo's anger did not flare. It concentrated, became cold, became precise. "Explain." Arya shook her head. "Noah is 10. He has a heart condition. Adrian controls his case through the foundation program, the surgery team, the medication grants, the transfer list, everything. If I embarrass him, if I leave him, if I even make him look bad, Noah's file can vanish under 100 polite reasons." "He told you that?" "Not like a villain in a movie." Her laugh was thin and empty. "Men like Adrian don't threaten loudly. They remind you softly. They say, 'You know how many children are waiting for Noah's spot?' They say, 'Board decisions are complicated.' They say, 'It would be terrible if people misunderstood your instability during such a delicate time.'" Matteo looked down the hall toward the gold-lit elevators that led to the gala floor. "And you were going to marry him. I was going to survive him until Noah was safe. That is not marriage. Neither is pretending you don't care while sending me cabs in the rain." The words struck both of them silent. Arya seemed shocked she had said them. Matteo's face did not change, but something in his eyes did. There it was, alive between them at last, the thing they had spent nearly a year feeding with silence. She loved him. Maybe not safely, maybe not with permission, maybe not in a way she would ever admit without pain forcing it out of her. But she loved him, and she thought he had chosen not to see it. Matteo took 1 step closer and stopped well outside her reach. "I cared too much to make you another woman trapped by a powerful man." Her eyes shone, and I was already trapped by one. The elevator chimed at the end of the hallway. Voices rose from the private access corridor. Arya wiped her expression clean in an instant, so fast it broke something in him. "Please," she said. "Tonight, let me do my job. Your job is not standing beside a man who hurts you. Tonight it is." "Why?" She looked toward the ballroom doors. "Because he thinks he has already won. That makes him careless." Before Matteo could ask what that meant, the doors opened, and Celeste Vane swept into the corridor, wearing emerald satin and the smile of a woman who collected powerful men like art. She was the Hospital Foundation chairwoman, the daughter of Senator Thomas Vane and Adrian Vane's most useful public shield. Her assistant, the same young woman who had spilled red wine down Arya's blouse 15 minutes earlier, hovered behind her with a tablet. "Matteo," Celeste said warmly, though her eyes flicked first to Arya, then to the closed wardrobe room behind them. "There you are. The donors are getting restless. Adrian is asking for his fiancée." Arya's fingers curled once at her side. Matteo noticed. Of course he did. Celeste noticed him noticing and smiled wider. "Is everything all right?" Arya answered before Matteo could. "Perfectly. I'll bring Dr. Vane to the stage." Celeste's gaze lowered briefly to Arya's engagement ring. "Good. He prefers you close during public moments." The sentence looked harmless. It sounded like poison. Is greater than is greater than is greater than is greater than. Arya nodded and walked ahead. Matteo watched her go, every protective instinct in him straining against the leash of strategy. Celeste lingered. "She's delicate," she said lightly. "Brilliant. Assistant, of course, but emotional. Adrian has been very patient with her." Matteo looked at her. "Has he? You know how women can be when they come from difficult backgrounds. Grateful one moment, resentful the next. Adrian saved her brother's life. Or close enough. Sometimes gratitude becomes confusion." Matteo's voice was quiet. "Be careful, Celeste." Her smile stiffened. "Of what?" "Speaking to me as if I confuse cruelty with charity." He left her there and entered the ballroom. Valenti Tower's grand hall glittered beneath chandeliers and camera flashes. White roses climbed the columns. A string quartet played near a fountain of champagne. Screens along the walls displayed children smiling in hospital beds, surgeons in blue gowns, donors shaking hands, headlines praising the Veil Foundation's miracles. The people in the room wore diamonds in sympathy. Matteo had hosted enough charity events to know that many wealthy people like generosity best when photographers were present. Near the stage, Adrian Vale stood surrounded by donors. Tall, handsome, silver-brown hair perfectly styled, his tuxedo immaculate, his smile gentle enough to comfort strangers. He looked like a man designed by the city's need for heroes. When Arya approached him, his smile softened publicly. Privately, his thumb pressed into her upper arm exactly where one of the bruises hid beneath silk. Arya's mouth did not move, but Matteo saw the tiny change in her breathing. Adrian leaned down and kissed her cheek for the cameras. "There you are," he murmured. "You changed too slowly." Arya's eyes remained forward. "The spill took time to clean. You should be more careful. People are watching." "I know. Good girl." Matteo heard nothing from across the room, but he saw Adrian's mouth form the words, and felt murder rise like heat behind his ribs. Rocco Bianchi appeared at his side, broad, silent, loyal for 15 years. "Boss, I need everything on Adrian Vale." Rocco did not blink. "Dr. Vale? Every complaint, every lawsuit that disappeared, every nurse who resigned without explanation, every patient file his signature controls, especially Noah Monroe." Rocco's gaze shifted briefly to Arya. He understood more than most men because he listened better than he spoke. Quietly. "So quietly the dead will envy you." "And if he is clean?" Matteo watched Adrian place his hand at Arya's lower back, guiding her toward the stage like she belonged to him. "He isn't." Rocco left. Matteo moved through the crowd, accepting handshakes, refusing conversations, letting old men praise the generosity of his family while his attention stayed on Arya. He saw how she stood beside Adrian with perfect posture, how she smiled when donors spoke, how she angled her body slightly away from his touch without making it obvious. He saw how Adrian performed tenderness when cameras turned and applied pressure when they turned away. The performance was flawless. That was what made it monstrous. On stage, Celeste introduced the evening. She spoke of hope, medical innovation, children saved by generosity, families carried through darkness by the Veil Foundation. Then she invited Adrian to speak. Applause swelled. Adrian took Arya's hand and drew her up with him. She did not resist. Matteo saw her hesitation, saw the fear she swallowed, saw the courage it took to stand under bright lights beside the man who had marked her body and threatened her brother with bureaucracy. Adrian smiled at the crowd. "Every child deserves a chance," he began. "Every family deserves hope." Arya's face remained composed, but Matteo saw the pain flicker through her eyes. Adrian continued. "Some of you know my work through the operating room, some through the foundation, but tonight I want to honor someone who has taught me the private meaning of hope. My future wife, Arya Monroe." Applause. Cameras turned. Arya's fingers tightened around the program card in her hand. Adrian looked at her with manufactured devotion. "When I met Arya, she was carrying the weight of her little brother's illness almost entirely alone. I was humbled by her strength, honored by her trust, and I am grateful every day that she allowed me to help." Matteo's jaw hardened. Arya's smile did not reach her eyes. She looked like a woman being buried under compliments. Adrian lifted her hand and kissed the ring. "Soon she will be my wife, and together we will continue fighting for children like Noah." The crowd applauded again, louder. Matteo did not. Arya glanced down for one brief second, and in that second her eyes found him. It was not a plea. It was not even fear. It was apology, as if she regretted that he had to see her like this, as if his pain was another burden she had to manage. Matteo wanted to cross the room, tear the microphone from Adrian's hand, and expose him with nothing but instinct. Instead, he stayed still because Arya had said Adrian thought he had already won, because careless men revealed themselves. Because if Matteo moved too soon, Adrian would hide behind reputation, surgeons, hospital boards, senators, and a city desperate to keep its heroes polished. So Matteo waited. The speech continued. A hospital video played. Donors cried at the correct moments. Celeste dabbed her eyes for the cameras. Adrian placed a hand at Arya's waist and held her there, while the screens showed children thanking him by name. Then Arya did something almost too small to notice. She shifted the program card in her hand and folded the top corner twice, once left, once right. Matteo had seen her do that only once before, during a contract negotiation. When she noticed two versions of a document had different page counts, it was her silent signal for discrepancy. Matteo's eyes moved to the screen. On the donor list scrolling at the bottom, one name appeared twice, spelled differently. Haldane Medical Logistics and Haldane Medical Logistics. A shell variation. A mistake? No. Arya had found something. Adrian finished his speech to thunderous applause. Arya stepped down first, and Matteo met her near the side corridor before Adrian could reclaim her. The duplicate name, he said. Her lips barely moved. You saw it. Tell me. Not here. Arya. She glanced toward Adrian, who was shaking hands with Senator Vane. Haldane is not a donor. It's a storage company tied to transplant transport records. The misspelled version appears in internal payment logs. Matteo's eyes sharpened. How do you know that? Because I copied the logs. He stared at her. The woman he had thought was trapped had been moving through a cage with a blade hidden in her sleeve. When? 3 nights ago. Her voice dropped. That's why he hurt me. Matteo's control thinned. You have proof? Partial. Not enough. He caught me before I got the full archive. Where is it? Not with me. Good. No, not good. He knows I have something. He doesn't know how much. Tonight he's logging into the Foundation archive after the award presentation to show the board a donor projection. That archive contains the original treatment priority lists. Matteo understood. The real lists? Arya nodded. Children moved down for donors. Children moved up for money. Noah's file marked conditional under my name. The word conditional landed like a blade. Conditional on what? Arya looked at him then, and all the pain she had hidden all night gathered in her face. On my compliance. Before Matteo could answer, Adrian appeared behind her. There you are. Arya turned. Adrian smiled at Matteo as if nothing in the world could touch him. Mr. Valenti, generous event, you honor us. Matteo's gaze held his. Do I? Adrian's smile did not falter. The hospital will be grateful for years. His hand moved toward Arya's back. Matteo stepped slightly, not between them fully, just enough that Adrian's hand stopped in the air. It was a small movement, but the temperature changed. Adrian's eyes flickered. Arya's breath caught. Your speech was moving, Matteo said. Hope is a powerful business. Adrian's smile thinned. Not a business, a calling. Everything is a business to men who keep ledgers. Adrian's fingers curled at his side. You would know more about ledgers than I do. Matteo almost smiled. Yes. Celeste approached quickly, sensing the edge, but not the cause. Gentlemen, the auction is beginning. Adrian, the board wants you near the presentation table. Adrian looked at Arya. Come with me. It sounded like a request. It was not. Arya hesitated for one heartbeat. Matteo saw it. Adrian saw Matteo see it. Jealousy moved through the doctor's perfect face like a crack under glass. Unless Mr. Valenti needs you, Adrian added softly. Arya's eyes lowered. I'll come. She walked away with him. Matteo watched them go. Rocco returned moments later, face grim. You were right. How bad? 3 nurses resigned in 2 years after filing complaints that never reached the board. 1 former fiancé signed a non-disclosure and left the state. 2 patient families accused him of changing treatment access after they questioned foundation fees, all buried. By Celeste? Foundation chairwoman signed off on internal review dismissals. Noah Monroe? Rocco hesitated. His file is tied directly to Vale, funding approved quarterly by his department. There's a note attached to the case. Matteo did not blink. Say it. Guardian cooperation essential to continued discretionary support. The words were dressed like policy. They smelled like extortion. Matteo looked toward the stage where Arya stood beside Adrian while a diamond necklace was auctioned for children whose names had been turned into fundraising ornaments. Get into the archive, Rocco grimaced. Hospital server is locked through Vale's tablet. We need access while he's logged in. Arya already knows that. She told you? She's been fighting him longer than we have. Rocco looked at her with new respect. Then we follow her lead? Matteo's eyes stayed on Arya. For once, yes. At the presentation table, Adrian unlocked his tablet with a passcode and fingerprint, smiling as donors leaned in to see projected impact charts. Arya stood close enough to observe, close enough to tremble, close enough to be punished if she made one wrong move. Matteo watched her hands. She picked up the silver pen beside the guest ledger and clicked it twice. Pause. Once. Pause. 3 times. It looked like nerves. It was not. Matteo turned to Rocco. 213. Rocco opened his phone and relayed it to Marco in security. Try 213 as archive segment key. 30 seconds later, Rocco's phone buzzed. His eyes lifted. We're in the outer layer. Matteo felt something like pride cut through the rage. Arya had given them the first door. Across the room, Adrian suddenly stopped speaking. His eyes lowered to his tablet. A notification had appeared. Not obvious to anyone else, but Matteo saw the change in his posture. Adrian knew someone had touched the system. His head rose slowly, and his gaze found Arya. For the first time all evening, the saint looked at her like the monster underneath had forgotten the cameras. Arya went pale. Adrian smiled again, but this time the smile was for her alone, and it promised consequences. He leaned close to her ear. Matteo read his lips from across the room. What did you do? Arya did not answer. Adrian's fingers closed around her wrist, lightly enough for the crowd, hard enough for her bones. Matteo moved. Rocco caught his arm. Boss, not yet. Matteo's eyes burned. He is touching her. And Marco is inside the server. 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds stretched like years. Adrian kept smiling at donors while holding Arya's wrist. Arya did not cry out. She did not pull away. She looked across the room at Matteo and gave the smallest shake of her head. Not yet. She was telling him not yet. Matteo hated her courage because it required her pain. Marco's message arrived on Rocco's phone. Inside. Downloading. Then the ballroom screens went black. A murmur moved through the crowd. Celeste snapped at a technician. Adrian released Arya's wrist and looked toward the projection booth. Then, a new image appeared on every screen in the room. Security footage. Arya entering a restricted archive office at night. Arya removing a flash drive from a drawer. Arya transferring money into an account under her name. Gasps rose around the ballroom. Is greater than is greater than is greater than is greater than? Celeste turned with practiced horror. Oh my God. Adrian stepped back from Arya as if wounded by betrayal. His performance began instantly. Arya, he said, voice soft enough to sound devastated. Tell me this isn't true. Arya stared at the screen stunned. The footage was real enough to be dangerous, and false enough to destroy her. She had entered the archive, yes, but the money transfer was fake. The drawer was staged. The timestamps were altered. Adrian had prepared this. He had known she might try something tonight, and he had built a trap inside her escape. Around them, donors whispered. Hospital board members stared. Senator Vane's face hardened. Celeste moved toward Arya, voice low and cold. Miss Monroe, you need to come with me before this becomes uglier. Adrian reached for the microphone with the sorrowful expression of a man forced to expose the woman he loved. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Arya has been under extraordinary emotional strain. Her brother's illness, the stress of our engagement, certain obsessive attachments she has formed at work. His eyes flicked to Matteo just long enough for the room to feel the implication. I had hoped to handle this privately. Arya's face drained of color. This was her nightmare. Not that he would hurt her in private, that she would tell the truth, and he would make the world call her unstable before the first sentence left her mouth. Adrian continued, voice rich with fake grief. She accessed confidential foundation files and moved money through accounts connected to her name. I believe she needs help, not condemnation. The crowd murmured with pity now, and pity was worse than hatred because it did not listen. Arya stood alone beneath the screens, bruises hidden again, truth buried beneath a perfect man's concern. Matteo stepped forward. The room quieted before he reached the stage. Adrian turned to him with a sad smile. Matteo, I know this is uncomfortable. She works for you. Perhaps you miss signs we at the hospital have been managing for some time. Matteo took the microphone from his hand. Not aggressively, not dramatically. He simply held out his hand. And Adrian, conditioned by the room's expectation that powerful men cooperate in public, released it. Matteo looked at Arya first, not with pity, not with doubt, with certainty. Then he turned to the crowd. Dr. Vale is right about one thing, Matteo said. This has been managed for some time. Adrian's smile faltered. Matteo continued. Calm as winter, but not by Arya Monroe. The ballroom went silent. Celeste's expression sharpened. Adrian's eyes cooled. Matteo looked up at the screen, still showing the doctored footage. Someone prepared this accusation before tonight. Someone expected Miss Monroe to become inconvenient. Someone needed all of you to believe she was unstable before you asked why a secretary knew enough to threaten a surgeon, a foundation chairwoman, and a hospital board. Adrian laughed softly. That is a serious claim. Matteo looked at him. Then you should be careful how many lies you tell while my people trace the source. For the first time, fear flickered across Adrian Vale's perfect face. Rocco appeared near the projection booth, phone to his ear, eyes locked on Matteo. He gave one sharp nod. The trace had found something. Arya saw it too. Her knees almost weakened with relief, but then Adrian moved. Not toward Matteo, toward her, fast enough to look like concern, hard enough that she knew what was coming. His hand closed around her bruised wrist in front of everyone. Arya, he said through his teeth, still smiling. Come with me now. Pain flashed up her arm. Matteo's voice cut through the room. Let her go. Adrian's grip tightened. She is my fiancée. Arya lifted her head. Something changed in her face then. Is greater than, is greater than, is greater than, is greater than. The fear did not vanish, but it stopped leading. She looked at Adrian, at the man who had used her brother, her love, her silence, her bruises, her reputation, and finally her own kindness against her. Then she looked at Matteo. Not for rescue, for permission to stop pretending. Matteo saw the question in her eyes and answered without words. He stepped back half a pace. He gave her the stage. Arya turned to the microphone in Matteo's hand and spoke clearly, her voice shaking but alive. No, she said. I am not your fiancé because I chose you. I am your fiancé because you made my brother's treatment the price of leaving. A sound moved through the crowd. Adrian's hand froze on her wrist. Arya kept going. And I am not unstable. I am not confused. I am not stealing from your foundation. I found the files you buried. I found the children you delayed. I found the donors you rewarded. And 3 nights ago, when you caught me copying proof, you put these bruises on my body and told me no one would believe a secretary over a man who saves children. Adrian's face twisted. Enough. He yanked her wrist. Matteo caught his hand. The movement was clean, controlled, and final. Adrian tried to pull free, but Matteo's grip did not move. The entire ballroom watched the famous surgeon's mask crack. Matteo leaned in, voice low enough that only the first rows heard every word. You will never touch her again. Then the screens behind them changed. The doctored footage disappeared. In its place appeared a hospital file marked Monroe, Noah. Beneath it, Guardian cooperation essential to continued discretionary support. Then another file. Treatment priority adjustments, donor-linked approvals, internal complaints dismissed by Celeste Vane's office. Names, dates, signatures. The ballroom erupted. Celeste shouted for the screens to be shut off. Senator Vane stood. Adrian stared at the evidence, then at Arya, hatred bare now. You stupid girl, he hissed. You think this saves him? You think this saves your brother? Arya's lips parted, but before she could answer, Rocco's voice came through Matteo's earpiece, low and urgent. Boss, hospital security just reported unauthorized access to Noah Monroe's room. Matteo's blood turned to ice. Arya saw the change in his face and knew instantly. Noah, she whispered. Adrian smiled. Not the public smile, the real one. Arya did not scream. The sound that came out of her was smaller than a scream, weaker than a cry, the kind of broken breath a person makes when fear goes too deep for the body to know what to do with it. Noah, she whispered again, and the whole ballroom, with its chandeliers and donors and cameras and champagne, disappeared from her mind as if none of it had ever mattered. Matteo heard Rocco's words through the earpiece a second time, sharper now. Unauthorized access to Noah Monroe's room. Hospital security says a transfer team entered with Vale Foundation credentials. They're trying to move him. Arya stepped backward, almost tripping on the edge of the stage. Adrian Vale's smile widened by a fraction, small enough that most people in the room missed it, but Matteo did not. Arya saw it too. That smile told her everything. This had never been only about her bruises, never only about the gala, never only about the files. Adrian had built the cage with more than one lock, and Noah had always been the final one. Matteo released Adrian's wrist slowly, not because he was done with him, but because Arya was already moving. She pushed past Celeste, past 2 stunned board members, past a donor who tried to ask if she was all right. She was not all right. She had not been all right for months, but she could run. Pain shot through her ribs with each step, but she ran anyway, clutching her phone in one hand, the other pressed to her side like she could hold herself together until she reached her brother. Arya, Adrian called after her, his voice still wearing concern for the crowd. You're not thinking clearly. Matteo turned to him, and for the first time that evening, the polished surgeon took one step back. Say her name again, Matteo said, and I will forget how many cameras are in this room. Adrian's face tightened. Threatening me won't save the boy. The microphone was still on. The sentence carried through the ballroom. Every whisper died. Adrian realized it too late. Arya stopped near the side exit, one hand on the doorframe, and looked back. The whole room looked at Adrian now. Not as a saint, not as a surgeon, but as a man who had just called a sick child leverage in front of 200 witnesses. Celeste's face went pale. Senator Vane swore under his breath. Matteo's eyes stayed on Adrian. Thank you, he said quietly. That was the first honest thing you've said tonight. Then he looked at Rocco. Lock the building. No one leaves with a phone wiped, a tablet broken, or a file deleted. Send every screen recording to Marco, the federal contact, and Dr. Naomi Reed. Now. Adrian's expression shifted at the name. Naomi Reed has no authority in my hospital. She does now. You can't just bring an outside doctor into a foundation case. Matteo stepped closer. I own the building. I fund half the wing, and I just watched you threaten a patient in front of witnesses. You would be amazed what doors open when a hospital realizes its miracle surgeon is about to become a national scandal. Arya could not wait another second. She ran into the private corridor. Matteo followed. Behind them, the ballroom exploded into chaos, but Matteo did not look back. Power meant nothing if it arrived too late. The private elevator took 17 seconds to arrive. Arya knew because she counted each one like a prayer. Her phone shook in her hand as she called Noah's room. No answer. She called again. No answer. The elevator doors opened and she rushed in, Matteo behind her. Rocco entering last with his phone against his ear. Security is delaying them, Rocco said, but the transfer order is real. Signed under Vale's authority. It says Noah is being moved to a different because his guardian is under investigation for theft and instability. Arya turned so fast her braid struck her shoulder. He can do that? He already did, Rocco said, but they haven't left the floor. The elevator began to descend. Arya pressed both hands to her mouth. Matteo stood beside her, close but not touching. That restraint nearly destroyed her. If he had grabbed her, she could have fought. If he had told her to calm down, she could have hated him. But he simply stood there, ready, terrifyingly still, letting her fear exist without trying to own it. Arya, he said. She shook her head. Don't look at me. If he hurts Noah, he will not leave that hospital with your brother. She let out a laugh that sounded like pain. You don't understand. Adrian doesn't have to touch him. He signs papers. He changes codes. He tells nurses I'm unstable. He says words like protocol and liability. And suddenly I'm outside a locked door begging to see the only family I have left. Then tonight we remove his words from the system. You can't fix 4 years in one night. No, Matteo said. But I can make sure he never gets another night. The elevator doors opened into the garage. 3 black cars were already waiting. Arya moved the nearest one, but her knees almost gave out. Matteo reached instinctively, then stopped before touching her. May I? He asked. The question landed in the middle of the emergency like a hand held over a wound. Arya looked at him, breathing hard. Then she nodded. Matteo put one arm around her carefully, supporting her without pulling her into him, and guided her into the car. Rocco took the front seat. The driver pulled out before the door fully closed. Chicago blurred outside the windows, silver and black and cold. Arya kept calling Noah's room. Still no answer. Then her phone buzzed with a video call from an unknown number. She answered so quickly she nearly dropped it. Noah's face filled the screen, pale, frightened, his oxygen tube slightly crooked. He was sitting upright in bed, clutching the small stuffed wolf Arya had bought him from a thrift store after his first surgery. Behind him, voices argued in the hallway. "Arya," he whispered. Arya's heart cracked. "Noah, baby, where's your nurse?" "They said I have to go." "Who said?" "A lady with a blue folder. She said you did something bad, and Dr. Adrian has to protect me." Matteo's hand curled into a fist on his knee. Arya forced her voice soft. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. Don't sign anything. Don't let them take your bracelet off. Don't let them move your bed unless Dr. Patel or Nurse Elise is there, okay?" Noah's lips trembled. "Dr. Adrian said, if I fight it makes you look worse." Arya closed her eyes. That was Adrian's genius. He knew how to make fear sound like obedience. "Noah, look at me." The boy's eyes lifted. "Do you remember our rule? If someone says you sent them, they have to know the code." "What's the code tonight?" Noah swallowed. "Blue pancakes? Good. Did anyone say blue pancakes?" He shook his head. "Then they're not for me." A faint strength returned to his face. "Okay." The video shook as someone entered the room. A woman's voice said, "Noah, sweetheart, we need to get you ready." Noah looked off screen. "Do you know the code?" Silence. The woman said less sweetly, "Give me the phone." Noah pulled it to his chest. Arya sat forward. "Do not touch him." The woman appeared on camera, blonde, polished, wearing a hospital badge and irritation disguised as concern. "Miss Monroe, you are currently under review for unauthorized access to Foundation records. Dr. Vale has ordered a protective transfer. That is my brother. And until your status is clarified, the board must consider his best interests. His best interest is not being moved in the middle of a cardiac episode by people he doesn't know." Matteo leaned into frame. His voice was quiet. "What is your name?" The woman faltered. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "The man whose security team is recording this call, whose lawyers are 3 minutes from your hospital administrator, and whose federal contact is already reviewing the transfer order you're holding." The woman's face changed. "Mr. Valenti, step away from the bed. I'm following hospital procedure." "No," Matteo said. "You are following a surgeon who has just been recorded threatening that child in front of witnesses. Step away from the bed." She looked off screen. More voices. Then the video shifted as Noah whispered, "Ari, the tall nurse is here." Relief hit Arya so hard she almost sobbed. Nurse Elise appeared, a broad-shouldered woman with kind eyes and the expression of someone who had no patience left for powerful men playing games with children. "Miss Monroe," she said firmly, "I'm with Noah. Dr. Patel is on his way. No one is moving him." Arya covered her mouth. "Thank you." Nurse Elise's eyes softened. "Get here safely." The call ended. Arya bent forward, shaking. Matteo wanted to touch her hair, her shoulder, anything that would tell her she was not alone, but he did not. He looked at Rocco instead. "Where is Adrian?" Rocco listened to his earpiece. He left the ballroom through the service hall. Celeste delayed security. "He's likely headed to the hospital." "Of course he is," Arya whispered. Matteo turned to her. "Why would he go there himself?" She wiped her face, and when she looked up, her fear had sharpened into understanding, because the transfer failed. Noah is the last thing he controls. If he can get to him, he can still force me to recant. "Would you?" Arya looked out at the city lights flashing past. "Yesterday, yes." Matteo's chest tightened. "And tonight?" Her voice came back stronger. "Tonight he made the mistake of touching my brother in front of me. At Street, Catherine's children's wing. The lobby was in controlled chaos. Security guards stood near the elevators. Nurses whispered behind desks. A hospital administrator in a gray suit was arguing with Rocco's men and losing. Arya stepped out of the car before it fully stopped. Matteo moved with her. Every eye turned toward them. And Arya hated the way people looked at her now. Not as a sister, not as a woman, but as the center of scandal. Matteo saw her shoulders tense. Head up, he said softly. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Easy for you to say. No, necessary for you to hear. They reached the pediatric cardiac floor, just as Dr. Adrian Vale walked out of the elevator at the opposite end of the corridor. His tuxedo jacket was gone. His bow tie hung loose, but his smile had returned, smaller now, private, stripped of charity and cameras. 2 hospital security officers trailed behind him uncertainly. He looked at Arya first. Not Matteo, Arya. You've caused quite a night, he said. Arya kept walking until Matteo's hand, not touching her, merely hovering near her back, reminded her she did not need to run at him to win. She stopped 10 feet away. Stay away from Noah, Adrian said. Still making demands you don't have the power to enforce. I do, Matteo said. Adrian glanced at him. For now, but you're not his guardian. She is. And she is currently implicated in theft of confidential medical files. Arya's voice shook, but did not break. Files that prove you were selling priority. Adrian smiled. Allegations, stolen data, emotional testimony from a woman under obvious distress. He looked down at her wrist. And no one will believe I hurt you after tonight. They'll believe you hurt yourself to build a story. Matteo took 1 step, but Arya raised her hand, not to stop Adrian, to stop Matteo. She looked at Adrian, and for the first time since Matteo had known her, she did not look like someone trying to survive the room. She looked like someone taking it back. You always loved that word, she said. Distress. It made everything I felt sound unreliable. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Arya. No. You're going to listen to me now. You used Noah because you knew I would let you hurt me before I let you hurt him. You used your patience because sick children made people too emotional to question your numbers. You used donors because rich guilt pays better than justice. And you used me because you needed a wife who made you look human. A muscle moved in Adrian's jaw. Careful. Why? Are you going to remind me how many children need Noah's spot? The security officers exchanged a glance. Nurses had gathered at the far end of the hall. Dr. Patel stood outside Noah's room, listening. Arya's voice grew steadier. You don't want to marry me because you love me. You want me beside you because I am proof of your story. The poor secretary, the sick brother, the grateful fiancé, your little charity miracle. Adrian's face hardened. I gave you everything. You gave me fear and called it help. Without me, your brother would still be waiting. Without you manipulating the list, maybe he would have been treated honestly years ago. For the first time, Adrian lost control in front of hospital staff. You ungrateful little, he reached for her. Matteo caught his wrist before his fingers touched her. The movement was faster than thought, but his grip remained controlled. No crack of bone, no public brutality, just the undeniable fact that Adrian Vale's hand would go no farther. I warned you once, Matteo said. Adrian tried to pull free. Take your hands off me. You first. Down the hall, a woman's voice cut through the tension. Dr. Vale. Everyone turned. Dr. Naomi Reed walked toward them with a leather bag in one hand and a tablet in the other. She was in her 40s, calm, sharp-eyed, wearing no makeup and an expression that made hospital administrators remember they were not the highest authority in a room. Adrian's face changed immediately. Naomi, you have no privileges here. Temporary emergency consult approved by the administrator 5 minutes ago. She held up the tablet. And before you threaten him, he signed it while watching the video of you threatening a pediatric patient's guardian. The gray-suited administrator looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Adrian's voice lowered. This is a private matter. Is greater than is greater than is greater than is greater than. Dr. Reed looked at Arya's bruised wrist, then at Noah's room, then back to Adrian. It stopped being private when a child's treatment file was marked conditional. A murmur moved through the hallway. Adrian's eyes flicked toward the elevator. Matteo saw it. Rocco appeared behind him, blocking the path. Running? Rocco asked. I'm going to call my lawyer. Adrian snapped. Good, Matteo said. Call one who reads fast. Dr. Reed turned to Arya. I reviewed Noah's file on the way. His treatment was delayed twice without medical justification. His medication grant was flagged for administrative review 3 times after you missed foundation events. That ends tonight. I'm moving his care to an independent team. Arya stared at her. Can you do that? With your consent and the evidence I've seen, yes. It will be messy. It will not be easy, but he will not be under Dr. Vale's authority again. Arya pressed both hands to her mouth. For years she had imagined freedom as something dramatic. A door slammed, a ring thrown, a villain defeated. In reality, freedom sounded like a doctor saying messy but possible. Adrian laughed once, ugly and short. You think Valenti money makes this clean? The board will fight it. The foundation will deny everything. And you, Arya, will be remembered as the unstable secretary who slept her way into a Mafia boss's protection. The hallway went silent. Matteo's face darkened, but Arya stepped forward before he could speak. She removed the engagement ring from her finger, slowly. Her hand trembled, but she did it. The diamond caught the hospital lights, cold and perfect. I didn't sleep my way into anything, she said. I worked, I endured. I stayed quiet because I thought silence was the price of Noah's life. And I loved someone I thought I could never choose because choosing him would make you punish my brother. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Matteo stopped breathing. Arya turned slightly, not fully facing Matteo because if she did, she might lose courage. Yes, she said, voice softer now. I loved him. Before tonight, before he saw the bruises, before he knew anything. I loved him because he never made me feel small for being careful, because he sent cars in the rain and pretended it was policy, because he never asked for more than I could give, because he stayed on his side of every line even when I wished he wouldn't. Matteo's control finally cracked, not into anger, but into something far more dangerous to him. Hope. Adrian stared at them both with hatred. How touching. Arya looked back at him. And I stayed with you because you held Noah's heartbeat in one hand and my reputation in the other. That was not love. That was a hostage situation dressed as an engagement. She placed the ring on the nurse's station counter. The sound it made was tiny, but everyone heard it. I'm done. Adrian lunged for the ring or for her, no one knew which. Rocco moved first this time, catching him by the arms and turning him hard against the wall. Adrian cursed, struggling, while two hospital security officers finally found the courage to assist. You can't do this, Adrian shouted. I am Dr. Adrian Vale. Dr. Reed's voice was flat. Not anymore. Federal agents arrived 9 minutes later. Not with sirens, not with drama, but with badges, sealed evidence bags, and the quiet efficiency of people who had been waiting for the right file to open the right door. Matteo had not created the investigation out of nothing. Adrian's enemies had existed for years. Nurses who had been silenced, families who had been priced out, doctors who had suspected but lacked proof. One former fiancé who had disappeared from public life after being called unstable in exactly the same way he had tried to destroy Arya. What Matteo had done was connect them, protect them, and make sure the proof could not be buried before morning. Celeste Vane was taken aside in the lobby after Marco traced complaint dismissals to her office. She did not scream. She did not faint. She simply turned gray and said, Do you understand what this will do to the hospital? Arya, standing near Noah's door, answered before Matteo could. Maybe it will make it a hospital again. Celeste looked at her with resentment, then something almost like shame. You don't know how many donations depend on men like him. I know how many children did. That ended the conversation. Adrian was escorted past them in handcuffs, still trying to stand tall, still trying to make disgrace look temporary. When he passed Arya, he stopped. The agents held him, but he leaned just enough to speak. He won't keep you, he whispered. Men like Matteo Valenti don't love women like you. They protect broken things until they get bored. For 1 second, the old poison searched for a way back into her blood. Then Matteo spoke behind her. Arya. She turned. He was not looking at Adrian. He was looking at her. Do not let a man in chains tell you what freedom looks like. Adrian's face twisted as the agents pulled him away. The elevator doors closed on him. Is greater than, is greater than, is greater than, is greater than, and for the first time in months, Arya took a breath that did not belong to fear. Noah was awake when she returned to his room. His eyes were tired, but bright. His stuffed wolf tucked under his chin. Is Dr. Adrian mad? He asked. Arya sat beside him and took his hand. Yes. At me, never at you. Noah looked past her at Matteo, standing respectfully near the door. Is he the rain car man? Arya froze. Matteo's eyebrow lifted slightly. The what? Noah smiled weakly. Arya said her boss sends cars when it rains because of company policy. But the company didn't send Mrs. Brooks a car when it rained. Arya closed her eyes. Noah, Matteo's mouth curved faintly, the first real almost smile of the night. Your sister is very observant, but apparently so are you. Noah studied him with a seriousness that made him seem older than 10. Do you like her? Arya made a choking sound. Noah Monroe. Matteo did not laugh. He walked closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. Yes, he said. Very much. Noah nodded as if confirming a suspicion. Good. She needs someone who doesn't yell. The simplicity of it nearly undid Arya. Matteo's voice softened. I don't intend to yell at her. Is greater than is greater than is greater than is greater than. Or make her cry. If she cries because of me, I will deserve whatever she does next. Noah looked satisfied. Okay, you can sit. Arya stared at her brother. You're giving permission now? Somebody has to. Matteo sat in the chair on the other side of the bed, not near enough to crowd Arya, close enough to be present. For a while there was only the beeping of monitors and the quiet movement of nurses. Dr. Reed came in to explain the transfer of care. Noah would need more testing, a revised treatment plan, and possibly surgery sooner than Adrian had allowed. None of it was simple. None of it was magically solved. But the word hope no longer sounded like something sold at a gala. It sounded like a plan. At 3:00 the morning, Noah finally slept. Arya stepped into the hallway exhausted beyond tears. Matteo followed after a moment. The hospital had gone quiet, washed in blue light and the distant hum of machines. Arya leaned against the wall and looked at her bare ring finger. I don't know what happens now. Matteo stood beside her, leaving space. Now you sleep. After that, Noah gets care. Adrian faces what he did. Celeste and the board answer for what they hid. And me? He looked at her then. You choose. She gave a tired laugh. That sounds generous. It is not generosity. It is repair. Repair for what? For every powerful man who made choice feel like a trick. Arya's eyes filled. Including you? The question was quiet but brave. Matteo took it like he deserved it. If I ever do, yes. She looked down the hall toward Noah's room. I can't go from belonging to Adrian's story to belonging to yours. I know. People will say I used you. People say many things when truth makes them uncomfortable. You don't care? I care what you believe. She finally looked at him. What if I don't know yet? His voice was steady, but his eyes were not. Then I wait. Matteo. I loved you enough to stay silent when I thought silence protected you, he said. Now I will love you enough to wait until your choice is free. Arya pressed her lips together as tears slipped down her face. This time she did not hide them. She was too tired to perform strength and too free, suddenly, to apologize for being wounded. Matteo lifted his hand slightly, stopping before touching her cheek. May I? She closed her eyes and nodded. His thumb brushed one tear away. Gentle as a vow he had no right to make yet. The touch was small. It shook them both. Morning came pale and cold over Chicago. By then, Adrian Vale's face was on every news screen in the hospital lobby, no longer framed by words like miracle or hero, but by investigation, patient list manipulation, foundation misconduct, and alleged abuse of power. Matteo made sure Arya did not see the worst of it, not because he thought she was fragile, but because she had earned a few hours where Adrian's name was not the loudest thing in her life. Noah was stable. Dr. Reed had already spoken to 2 specialists. Nurse Elise brought Arya coffee and a muffin she did not ask for but needed. Rocco stationed men far enough from Noah's room not to frighten him and close enough that no one entered without being checked. At 8, Matteo's driver took Arya home to change, while Matteo stayed at the hospital with Noah's permission. Don't let him touch the pudding, Noah warned. That's mine. Understood, Matteo said seriously. Arya went home and stood in her tiny apartment for 15 minutes without moving. Adrian's gifts were everywhere once she knew how to look. The framed gala photo, the expensive coat he chose because he hated the one she had bought herself, the white engagement party dress still hanging in plastic, the hospital pamphlets, the reminders, the invisible strings. She took a trash bag and filled it slowly, not in rage, in release. At the bottom of her desk drawer, she found the first note Matteo had ever left her, written on a meeting agenda after she had skipped lunch during a merger week. Eat before the room eats you alive. MV. She had kept it folded behind her passport for 9 months. She touched the paper once, then placed it in her bag. When she returned to Valenti Tower that afternoon, the ballroom was empty. The flowers looked tired. The stage had been cleared. Workers moved silently, removing banners with Adrian's name. Arya rode the private elevator to the executive floor, wearing a simple gray sweater. No ring, no makeup over the faint bruise near her collar because she no longer had the strength or the shame to hide it. Matteo was in his office, but the door was closed. On his desk, waiting for her, was a white envelope with her name on it. Inside was a resignation letter, already written, is greater than is greater than is greater than is greater than, already dated, unsigned. Beneath it was a note in Matteo's handwriting. If staying feels like another cage, leave. If leaving feels like fear, stay. Either way, choose for yourself. Arya read it twice. Then she sat in his chair, took his pen, and wrote one line at the bottom of the resignation letter. She folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and left it in the center of his desk. Matteo returned 10 minutes later and found her gone. For one terrible second, the air left him. He opened the envelope slowly, already preparing himself to accept the first choice she had made freely, even if it took her away from him. The resignation letter was blank except for the line she had written, "Coffee at 8. No locked doors." Matteo stared at it, and something in his chest that had been clenched for years finally loosened. The next morning, at exactly 8 now, Arya stood outside his office holding 2 coffees. She did not knock at first. Through the glass wall, Matteo saw her and rose immediately. He reached for the door, then stopped, waited. Arya noticed. A small smile touched her mouth, tired but real. She knocked once. "Come in," he said from inside. She shook her head. "No." His brows lifted. She held his coffee up. "You come out." For a moment, the most dangerous man in Chicago stood in the center of the office where men twice Arya's size had learned to fear him. Then Matteo Valenti smiled, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway where she could decide whether to meet him halfway. Arya handed him the coffee. Their fingers brushed. Neither rushed, neither claimed. Behind them, the city kept moving, scandals kept breaking, enemies kept calling. And Noah texted Arya a photo of his untouched pudding cup with the warning, "Tell the rain-car man I'm watching him." Arya laughed. Matteo looked at Arya like that single breath of freedom was worth every war waiting beyond the glass walls. Arya looked back at him. She was not healed. She was not fearless. The bruises had not vanished, and the past had not stopped hurting. But for the first time, she was standing still because she chose to. For months, Adrian Vale had taught her that love meant locked doors, signed papers, fingers around her wrist, and threats disguised as protection. Matteo showed her something different. He did not pull her into his world. He stepped back from the doorway and waited. And in that quiet moment, Arya Monroe finally understood the truth. The safest door was not the one a powerful man opened for her. It was the one he respected enough to stand outside of until she was ready to turn the handle herself.